Every single person who has entered your life arrived carrying a purpose you were not yet equipped to understand. Not a small purpose, not a passing one, a purpose that was woven into the fabric of your becoming. One that would only reveal itself slowly, through time, through pain, through growth, and through the kind of reflection that only distance can produce. Think about it. Out of every possible corner of the world, every passing moment in time, every version of this life you could have lived, you ended up sharing space with this one particular human being. You could have been somewhere else that day. They could have taken a different road, made a different choice, been running 5 minutes late. But they weren't, and neither were you. That is not coincidence. The universe is vast. Human lives are brief and scattered. The probability of two specific people colliding at precisely the right moment, in precisely the right emotional state, carrying precisely the right unfinished wounds, is staggeringly small. And yet, here you are, thinking about this one person, feeling the weight of this one connection. That weight has meaning, something between you needed to be resolved. A wound requiring contact, a truth requiring a witness, a part of your story that could not move forward until this particular chapter was written. When you first encountered them, you felt it. Something quieter than excitement, something deeper than ordinary attraction. It was as though a part of you had already been waiting for precisely this, as though some interior compass, one you didn't even know you had been pointing in their direction long before your paths physically crossed. The conversations arrived without effort. The silence between your words didn't feel hollow. It felt inhabited, full, warm, like two people who had somehow already agreed on the important things without ever having to say them aloud. That wasn't chemistry alone. That was recognition, something your soul had already quietly known, a surfacing at last into your conscious awareness. You crossed paths with this person because they were holding a key, not to their own world, but to a room inside yours that had been locked for years, a buried piece of your courage, a forgotten need to be genuinely and truly seen, not performed for, not managed, but seen. A version of yourself that had been standing quietly behind a closed door, patiently waiting for someone with the right presence to make it feel safe enough to step forward. And for a while, they did exactly that. But here is where most people misread the signal entirely. That meeting was never designed for comfort. It was designed for transformation, and real transformation almost never arrives gently. It arrives like a season, sometimes like spring, soft and gradual, and sometimes like a storm that rearranges everything overnight. Either way, nothing looks the same after it passes. Perhaps right now the distance is real. Messages have gone still, calls have ended, something, timing, fear, ego, circumstance, or simply the complicated friction of two people who weren't yet fully ready, carved silence into the place where your connection once existed. And that silence can feel like loss. It can feel like failure. It can feel like proof that something beautiful was broken beyond repair. But silence is rarely what it appears to be on the surface. What most people never stop to see is this: your withdrawal has actually amplified your presence in their mind, not reduced it. When someone is constantly available, we adapt to them the way we adapt to familiar furniture. We stop noticing the detail. We stop appreciating the craftsmanship. We simply move around them without thought, taking their presence entirely for granted. When they disappear, we begin to search. We start reaching for something that is no longer there, and only in that reaching do we finally understand how much we were relying on it. Suddenly, the precise details return. The specific way you listened, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but actually fully present. The ease of being understood without having to explain yourself, without having to shrink yourself, without having to carefully select which version of yourself was safe to show. The kind of emotional safety that required no performance. That kind of connection doesn't come around often. Most people spend years, sometimes their entire lives, searching for it. This silence doesn't erase what was genuine, it magnifies it. Your distance wasn't abandonment, it was a weight, the real, measurable weight of your absence that they were finally being forced to carry and fully feel. Every quiet evening, every moment something funny happened, and they reached instinctively for their phone before remembering. Every time a song played or a place appeared, or a particular quality of light fell across a room in a way that carried your memory inside it. That is your presence, speaking without a single word. That is the evidence of what you built, echoing through their daily life in your absence. And here is the deeper current running beneath all of this. You did not enter this person's life only to receive from them. You arrived to demonstrate something vital, something they may not have even known they were missing until you showed them what it looked like. You brought genuine depth into spaces where others brought only surface. You offered real constancy where others offered only convenience. You showed up with honesty in a world that had trained them to expect performance. When that quality of presence is removed, it doesn't simply leave a gap, it leaves a standard, an internal benchmark that every future interaction will now be quietly measured against, whether they admit it or not. Not because you were without flaw, but because you were genuinely, consistently there. And that consistency, that real, unguarded, imperfect presence, is rarer than most people realize until they have experienced its absence. Your stepping away isn't punishment. It is a mirror, showing them with perfect clarity the full shape of what existed between you and the exact shape of what they risked losing. Mirrors don't lie. They don't soften or flatter. They simply show what is. And sometimes the most honest mirror another person can hold up to us is the empty space they leave behind. Sometimes two souls must move apart before they can clearly perceive one another. When you are standing too close to something, you cannot see its full dimensions. You need distance to understand the scale of it. You need space to step back, breathe, and allow the truth of what you had to come into focus. You are currently in the season of becoming. They are in the season of recognizing. Both seasons are necessary. Both seasons are part of the same journey. Your growth doesn't need an announcement. The people who matter will feel the difference. You don't need to broadcast your healing. You don't need to perform your progress or curate evidence of your transformation for an audience of one. Growth has its own energy. It radiates outward quietly and unmistakably, the way heat radiates from a fire even when you can't see the flame. The people who are genuinely attuned to you will sense the shift without needing it explained. Here is the sharpest truth. You were not placed in their path to diminish yourself, just to hold a place there. You were not sent to negotiate away your own value in exchange for proximity. You were not meant to make yourself smaller, quieter, or less, to fold the edges of your personality inward so that someone else could remain comfortable. You were sent to discover your own worth and to hold it without apology, without wavering, without requiring anyone else's confirmation before you could believe in it. Sometimes life brings someone rare into your world and then deliberately introduces distance, simply to observe whether you will forget your own worth while waiting for them. It is a test that has nothing to do with them. It is entirely about you. Will you hold your ground? Will you continue to grow? Will you carry your value forward even when the person who first helped you recognize it is no longer standing beside you? That is the real question this season of your life is asking. The absence of someone meaningful doesn't mean you have less to offer. It doesn't mean you were too much or not enough or somehow wrong. It means the next chapter of your story, requires a version of you that has been refined by this experience, made more clear, more grounded, more anchored in self-knowledge than the version that first walked into that connection. If this bond runs deep, they will return, more honest, more deliberate, more ready than before. Not the same as they were, because people who go through genuine reflection don't come back unchanged. They will return having done the inner work that distance made necessary, having sat with their own feelings long enough to understand them, having realized, without being told, what they were risking and what they genuinely want. If they don't return, then this encounter delivered exactly what it was always meant to deliver, and its purpose is now complete. That is not failure, that is completion. There is an enormous difference. A lesson that has been fully learned does not need to be repeated. A door that has served its purpose does not need to remain open. Some people are chapters, not the whole book. And the most beautifully written chapters are often the ones that end before you feel ready for them to. Either way, nothing here was accidental. Everything was necessary. Every conversation, every moment of connection, every difficult silence, every unanswered question. All of it was part of something larger than the two of you may have been able to see while you were standing inside it. The only question truly worth sitting with now is not whether they are thinking about you. Of course they are. Genuine connection leaves traces that do not simply fade on command. The question worth sitting with, quietly, honestly, without the noise of longing or ego or fear, is whether you are finally thinking clearly and honestly about yourself, about what you need, about what you deserve, about who you are becoming in the space that this distance has opened. That is where the real work lives. That is where the real story is being written. If this message reached something real in you, please take a moment to like this video. It genuinely helps Psychology Wisdom reach the people who need it most. Subscribe so the next insight finds you before you even knew you were searching for it.